Yeah, so getting into the main events for UFC 309, and it's a fight that I don't know if I'm gonna bet on, if I'm being honest. I'm like 50-50, but if I had to bet, would be my thought process, right? So I want to talk about DC's Greco-Roman wrestling. I think in the beginning of their second fight, which we know the UFC just posted up the fight with Stipe and DC on YouTube recently. I think it was in the beginning rounds, like the Greco-Roman wrestling mixed with obviously the in the pocket boxing of Daniel Cormier was a bit difficult for Stipe Miocic to combat in the beginning, unless it was part of his game plan, which I highly doubt. He was taking a lot of damage, and it took him some time to figure that out, as well as his corner. I think that we all know that Jon Jones' wrestling has been impeccable. He is kind of a wrecking ball when it comes to closing that distance down, getting those single legs, getting a double leg, getting those underhooks, forcing his opponent to the cage. And I just think if Miocic had a hard time with a shorter Cormier, allowing DC to close distance, Jones is a long fighter. If he does not impose his will, Jones will pick him apart alive. And that's and we know that Jon Jones is that type of predator. He's at that type of level, and he's been that type of person from a very young age, where he is the type of person to rip his prey apart live in front of a crowd, in front of some babies. He doesn't care. He is a savage, he is a conqueror, and he is a barbarian, you know. So Stipe's boxing is really good when in the clinch, though. His clinch striking is very underrated due to dirty boxing within the clinch being something that isn't discussed in MMA media. Stipe also really, and I think it's unsaid, Stipe also has really strong power and solid hands. We've seen him knock out fighters backwards on his back foot. But not only that, we've seen Cormier cease to get rocked by Miocic when being too arrogant with regards to his performance within early rounds of that fight, of their second fight. Also, I'd be very curious to see how the fight would play out when Stipe is constantly applying pressure from the opening bell. I think the key to applying pressure within MMA is using your ring presence to force the opponent to the cage with their back against the wall, i.e. the cage. Putting your opponent at such a disadvantaged position when using as few strikes as possible is what will be favorable in the eyes of the judges. This will also frustrate your opponents, cause them to get restless. Your enemy will either make a mistake or leave an opening. Bringing it back to the Jones and Miocic fights, will Jon leave an opening, and more importantly, will Stipe be ready to capitalize? I think that's really the big question. Can Stipe capitalize should an opportunity present itself in the octagon? I think so. If his second fight against DC is anything to go by, the man scans, finds a weakness, exploits it for an opening, sees the opening, and pounces. And I just like to say a lot of his finishes have come this way, and with his hands and on the back foot. Jon really needs to be careful of this man. I think Stipe will definitely look to put Jon through his paces within the early rounds, really test Jon's conditioning coming off an injury. This fight is definitely shaping up to be exciting. Saying that though and why is honestly, I think there's too many variables, so I'm probably going to sit out. Again, 50-50, I'm not too sure. Like, as I'm reading this, as I was typing it, I was just like, I don't know, man. I'm definitely going to I think Stipe can knock Jon Jones the fuck out, you know. So you see, I think it's Jon Jones. He has to win, but to do that would be not to recognize that this is MMA and anything can happen. Besides that, I think that it's seriously disrespectful to Miocic, who I believe to be the greatest heavyweight of all time. Yes, he has been taken down and chopped down before, but I still believe him to be great. I think if he gets going, he'll provide some real problems for Jon. A lot depends on how Jon comes off. I think they're both old, and Jon coming off an injury, I see round one being a feeling out process. I think Jon's main priority will be on winning, not a finish, so I don't see the fight ending in round one. It just would have to be incredibly opportunistic if it does. I don't see John Jones going in there with the mindset of chasing a finish. I think that makes sense for Stipe. He should look to knock John Jones out, but I think we are going to see a cautious John Jones at the start after opening bell. I think round 1 and 2 won't be very high pace, still pretty much a feeling out process. Whoever controls the center of the ring will be the boss. Either way, I don't see the fight ending in round 1. If the fight, however, did end in round 1, I think it would be more likely to be Miocic with the KO. I think John will be coming in very cautious after an injury and such a long time away. His aura is that he never has lost, so I think his priority is to protect that. I think Stipe, the seasoned veteran that he is, will be very smart to capitalize on that. Honestly, a lot of the fight depends on who controls the cage. That's who will enforce their will. If Stipe, I see him chasing a finish, so a higher pace, more likelihood of a KO, and if John, then I see it being more strategic and cerebral. I don't think Stipe will want to play to the tune of Jones. Hardly. I think this is where they will clash, which, now that I think about it, I must admit makes it an interesting fight. I think Stipe is going out there and will seriously push the pace, and John will look to calm things down. There will be a clash. In the slugfest, I favor Stipe's power, but I think Jones's striking is much more clinical. Stipe can be throwing a haymaker, and it will be all too easy for John to sneak in an elbow that either cuts and or stuns Stipe. Remember, the new rules are live for this fight, and the new rules definitely favor John without a question. However, things suddenly change if John is at the back foot, backslid, and now you have Stipe hunting you down and absolutely globing you. But like I said, there's too many variables, which is what makes it an interesting fight. I would pick John to win, but pick Stipe to KO as well. I favor Stipe to KO because that's the degen in me, but the safe money is on Jones by decision. It most likely will be a boring slugfest, but this is MMA. Anything can happen, especially when it comes to Johnny Bones Jones. It's too easy for him to pull off something spectacular, especially with a point to prove. He hasn't been this doused in his career. Does he sink or does he swim? Survive or thrive? We'll have to wait and see. I think the key to victory for Miocic will be to apply constant pressure onto Jones from the onset. I think he should impose his experience at heavyweights on Jones. He should take advantage of what would be his presumed advantage in conditioning. He should test John's mental and metal early on and put his recovery to the test. He should pressure John to the cage, hoping he tries to escape with a burst. In doing this, Jones plays into Miocic's hands by allowing Stipe to set John up on the back foot. I think Miocic needs to step in and out, circling Jones towards the cage side, trying to be facing towards the audience and not the center, keeping Jones in his sweet spot and always short due to Jones being the longer fighter. For John, the game plan should be to maintain range control, utilizing his long limbs and set up those teeps to maintain long guard and a good rangefinder. Punish his opponent with high kicks, as Stipe is fond of dropping his hands. I think Jones should adopt a lateral stance like we see from Wonderboy McGregor and MVP. I think he should blitz into and out of range, looking to cause damage with his knees and elbows. Right, and do this in close quarters as well as the clinch. I think it would then be very easy for John to finish the fight on the ground. Exciting for sure, and I'm definitely looking forward to this fight.